Adi Shankar is a Hollywood producer who is the go-to guy for adaptations of video game series, including Netflix shows like CastleVania, Captain LaserHawk, and the upcoming Devil May Cry show. We chat about how he created his dream job in his 20s, how he convinced Hollywood gatekeepers to let him pursue his vision without their interference, and the steps to invent your own job that is both creatively fulfilling and commercially successful. Tell me about LaserHawk. Where does that creative germ come from? So this is your most recent Netflix show. It's based on Ubisoft properties.
Yes.
But like loosely, your own interpretation. And I think for those of you watching, we will talk about how you have what I think is the coolest job, where these companies at a very young age, you're in your mid-30s basically, give you permission to take their IP, go ham at it. The way like you were able to do some stuff with Rayman that I cannot believe that they gave you permission to do. I won't spoil anything.
Oh, we could spoil it.
They gave you tremendous creative license with their intellectual property. And I think that's just awesome and incredible. So like, let's start with LaserHawk. Where does that germ come from?
So with Captain LaserHawk, so the full title, Captain LaserHawk, Blood Dragon Remix. So I will describe the process, but keep in mind as I'm describing it, I'm really reverse engineering something that I do intuitively. So in a way, it's a download, it's a channel. I'm seeing something play out in my head, in my mind's eye. I'm observing this like alternate reality, and I'm kind of transcribing it. That's what it feels like. Now, if I were to kind of dissect the elements, it's effectively, I love George Orwell, 1984, Animal Farm. I love Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. I love Neuromancer. I'm a huge sci-fi guy, sci-fi science fiction buff, right? And I love alternate history, Philip K. Dick. And I love dystopian science fiction. The kind of science fiction that ends up being a mirror. It's like about this alternate world, but it's really a mirror.
Yeah, it's a mirror. Social commentary.
Yeah, social commentary. So I wanted to do that. And I like world building, right? Like I was like, I didn't really like Lord of the Rings, but I was like, oh, it's dope that this dude got to like, calling him a dude, got to like create this universe. Like I want to create a universe.
I feel the same way, by the way. Like the plot of Lord of the Rings is a little bit like nobody dies after Boromir, basically. That's like one of the main things. And to me, that's not as engaging. But the world and the languages that he made and the histories and this guy's dad going back 4,000 years, that to me seems like such a treat to get to just live in for decades at a time. Yeah. And
I have these like alternate worlds, like they almost exist within me. If that makes sense.
No, totally.
Yeah. And then what I wanted to do was populate this world with alternate versions or reimagined or remixed or whatever the nomenclature is I'm using today. Reimagined versions of known IP. Right? I was like, oh, what if Sam Fisher, the hero from Splinter Cell, what if he's not like that, but he's like this? Drop him in the world. See what happens.
And so you're letting these ideas kind of bounce off of each other. Like, what if, say, I won't fill it, but like Rayman was an XYZ, and how would that interact with the Sam Fisher who looked like this in a dystopian world?
Right, exactly. And I saw, so at like the earliest stage of this process, I saw a few images. One was Rayman with Tommy guns.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh.
I want that to happen.
So Rayman has Tommy guns. And then I also saw Rayman being the chief propaganda officer of the fascist regime that controlled everything in this world. And I saw the Raving Rabbids, which, the Raving Rabbids, but I saw them as Godzilla-esque kaiju. And I like, wrote those down. And then it just started, coming.
Got it. And by the way, for the people who don't know some of these are intellectual property from video games and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Got it. That
Ubisoft owns. These are big, massive.
Yeah.
IP.
And then the question is, how do I get them to go together? Do you see yourself? Have you heard like George R. R. Martin talk about his process as if he's a gardener? Are you familiar with that?
Yes. And I actually, so not to be a douchebag, I had this conversation with Joel. We had dinner.
Really?
Yeah. We had dinner.
Oh, dude, tell me about that.
As I was writing this, actually.
No kidding.
Yeah. I didn't tell him about this.
Okay.
I was talking to him about something else. Right. I was like,
Where's Winds of Winter?
no, he was like, he gave me like Lannister gold. He had like Game of Thrones coins.
That is the coolest thing.
He like
ever.
gave me Game of Thrones coins, and then he was like, hey man, like, yeah, very nice guy.
Yeah.
He's a very, very nice guy. But yeah, the gardening thing, he's like, oh, you know, I now I'm like, I don't want to put words in George R.R. Martin's mouth, but
well, if I remember correctly, it's that he has an end in mind that he'd like to get to. He'd like his garden to look a certain way, and he's got some seeds in there. Yes. But he doesn't know the exact way that it's going to happen, and sometimes the seeds take him in a direction that he didn't think he was going to go, so he's kind of allowing the organic growth of these characters to influence and shape the story, particularly in the middle, which is why he's having such a difficult time getting to the final thing that he would like to see, because it's like, oh shit, how do we get from where I wound up to where I had sort of planned that I wanted to be and foreshadowed?
Yeah.
As opposed to somebody who choreographs every single step of it and loses some of that organic character teaching you where the story needs to go.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's 1000% my process.
Okay.
Right. Like, I'd say of all the, season 1 is 6 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Of all the episodes, the one that was rewritten the most was episode 4.
That's the Winds of Winter episode, basically, which is right before the final act. How do we...
Well, I had this whole episode in mind,
Mm-hmm.
and I went and I wrote it, and then all of a sudden there was like, I read it, and I'm like, this is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's very cool. It has no soul, but it's very cool. And the writer I worked with on that episode, I went back to him and I said, look, there's something wrong here.
Can you pause for a second?
Yeah.
What does it feel like inside when you detect that something doesn't have soul? Like you're creating a piece of art and you're like, this, I don't feel it.
Again, not to be like weird, like douchey name
This
dropping.
I actually think this is where creativity comes from.
Yeah.
So I'm so curious.
It's Kanye yelling at me.
Okay. Is this a real experience that you've
Yes.
had? Okay.
Yeah, he once like just called me and just laid into me. This was like a few years ago. Just laid into me. I'm like, and he's like, you're not connected with your soul. And he was like explaining to me like the way in which my mind and my soul were like disconnected. And it was almost derailing my, that's not the word he used, but it was almost derailing my creative flow.
Interesting. And it makes sense that would happen in episode 4, because that's the one where your mind is going, this needs to get here.
Yes.
I need to draw a line from
Bingo.
A to B to C.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, well, that doesn't feel okay.
Exactly.
Got it.
So, and then I'm like, okay, so the compass says there's something, the compass, the radar, the sonar, whatever the word is, the barometer, is saying something, it feels off, but intellectually it's awesome.
Well, before we go too far, because I've asked you so many questions, was there anything else from that meeting with George that like came through? That because we brought that up for a reason other than like he was mentioning the garden to you.
Well, he gave me a lot of confidence in what I was doing because of the language he would use.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just one example,
Yeah.
right? I went to Northwestern. He was also a Northwestern alumni. So we were just kind of talking about our experiences, and obviously he's way older than me.
Yeah.
So it's, very, very different time periods. But the one thing that, okay, so the example of language that he used, which was awesome. I'm really into comic books. For whatever reason, I assumed he really wasn't as big of a comic book nerd as me.
Mm-hmm.
Totally wrong.
Yeah.
Totally wrong. He's like me, is an encyclopedia on all things nerd culture. But we started talking about some Justice League comics, and he referred to them as the classics. I can't do it justice because he needs to be saying it, but the way he said it was he was talking about it in the way that, and the way he said classics was the way you would talk about like the Iliad or the Odyssey.
Yeah.
Right? But he's talking about the fucking Justice League.
Okay.
But again, this wasn't like a joke. He actually meant it with the same reverence of the Iliad and the Odyssey. And I was like, he takes what we do very, very seriously, as do I. Right? But I don't know how to say this other than like I had a chip on my shoulder for part of this because it's like, okay, well, you work in dark fantasy and you do like these weird alt fiction things with like kids cartoons like Power Rangers, like, and I'm like, but yeah, what you're doing is cool. Basically, you know, it was more of an internal shift within me where I'm like, no, like this is real. It's real, right? It may not be like a play on Broadway, but it's high art.
That seems like the thing that's missing is that it's like if it's a cartoon and if it's animated, it doesn't carry the same cultural or status that high art does, and that can make you approach it in a way that isn't deeply sincere and connected to like, no, this deserves contact with the deepest part of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would get asked by people like, hey, dude, why did you pivot into animation? Like, why are you making cartoons now? You used to be doing like real stuff and now you're doing cartoons. I'm like, dude, it's just a medium. It is literally just a medium. I get to tell a $200 million story, right? But with like not $200 million.
Yeah.
It's for me, animation is a license to go big. It's just a medium. It's a tool to tell a really big story.
And that conversation with George helped you drop the almost like inferiority complex chip on your shoulder that might have gone along with the fact that it wasn't Broadway, it wasn't live action, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And this was not just it was like a full dinner.
Got it.
It was like a full like long dinner that went for hours. And I was just like absorbing stuff.
What put you guys in touch?
The true story?
I would love the true story.
There's a guy who's like now in jail.
Okay.
Who just connected us.
Yeah.
And then we just met up for dinner.
Okay, so this is like a mutual acquaintance. It was like you guys should meet.
Yes.
Cool. Had he seen your stuff?
Yes.
Okay, and so he was a fan of your stuff and you were a fan of Game of Thrones, I imagine.
I mean, I would say I was a bigger fan of him than he was of me. Most likely, right? I would assume.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he was aware. And but what was more interesting is he got the ethos of the thing I was doing, right? He got this whole like, oh, you're taking the thing and then you're subverting it.
That's yeah. Let's go there because I think to give people context, because I mean, totally non-douchely, you have dropped Kanye and George. How the hell did you get here? Which I think is an interesting story that I only know cursorily. Let's say. So, how old are you now?
I'm now 38.
So you're 38. And for years, you have been getting access to these IPs. I said it in the kitchen, but I'll repeat it for the audience. The only people I know that have been able to create their own work structure in that way are people that have gone full entrepreneurial, no permission, no studio giving them license at that age. Like the other person is Kevin Feige, but he had to work all his year in this, or all his life in the studio system to get the chance to take a crack at some of these things. And you've gotten access very quickly.
Yeah.
So like going back to your 20s, how did you get in? Including, I know that a lot of it has to do with the sense of bravado and confidence that you just, for whatever reason, had when you walked into some of these rooms.
Well, I just assumed that it would work.
Well, and what was it? Like you had ideas. What was like the break that got you in?
It was kind of like, well, I guess that's a different question, right?
Yeah.
The break that got me in versus this whole subversion thing.
Okay.
So I assumed, and I assumed incorrectly, I assumed that everyone wanted to see a hard R version of like everything, right? So when I first moved to LA, I made a list of every piece of intellectual property that I loved, right? Everything from fucking G.I. Joe to Voltron to Care Bears to Captain Crunch, like all of it.
Captain Crunch.
And I was like, I had an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, what is the thing? What is the IP? Who owns it? Who owns the option? And then you realize really quickly, oh, it's all owned by a handful of corporations, a very small handful of corporations. So the entirety of culture is owned by a small handful of corporations, right? I also assumed that everyone wanted to see a hard R version of all of these characters, right? So Hard R, Where's Waldo? It's like Born Identity with Where's Waldo, right? He's like dark and he's like hiding. He's beating people with his cane.
Got it.
Right? Care Bears. Okay, they're in this real world. They do the Care Bear stare, but like fucking people are like, whoa, they're like an asset. People are trying to steal them and like chain them up and poke them to get the Care Bear stare because they're like, you know,
get Care Bear stares and hypnonize people. God.
Yeah.
The CIA wants to know where they are.
I assumed that everyone wanted to see this. And yeah, so I would just kind of go and pitch this stuff, and like no one wanted like to hear it.
So when you say go and pitch, did you have to do anything special to get access to these people?
You just call them up.
Okay.
So you just go on, you know, because so for instance, what I really wanted to do, my first dream project was, do you know the actor Macaulay Culkin?
Of course, yeah.
Do you know the character Richie Rich?
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah.
So I wanted to do a dark take on Richie Rich. He's now 25, right? Macaulay Culkin is playing him again. He's like, so the cartoon we all watched, the Richie Rich cartoon. So in this universe, his parents made this cartoon to kind of, you know how like wealthy parents will like dress their kids up in weird costumes, and that's like a thing that happens in American society, and like Upper East Side of New York, that kind of
sure.
thing. So, and it's like, okay, your last name's Rich. Why the fuck are you naming your kid Richie? Right. So he's now like this deeply traumatized, like 20-something-year-old whose like parents have made a mockery out of him. Like he can't go anywhere. He's like super famous. Everywhere he goes, it's like just inauthentic interaction after inauthentic interaction, and everyone's making fun of him. So it's like a comeback story of a dude trying to like find himself while he's being perpetually mocked.
And so this, like just this, you like to think through intellectual property that you like. What if it were real? Like why would somebody name their kid Richie Rich? You're asking questions that the first movie does not ask you to ask, basically.
Right.
Got it. Yeah. And then
I was like, I developed it for Macaulay Culkin. I mean, I didn't know Macaulay Culkin at the time. I still don't know Macaulay Culkin.
Develop means you started this idea, and are you writing a script? Are you?
Yeah, outline script. I'm like, okay, and then I'm going to get Macaulay Culkin. Because, and at the time, The Wrestler had come out, Mickey Rourke, The Wrestler. And I literally thought I wanted this to be his comeback role. Macaulay Culkin, I'm like, dude, like tonally, I don't know quite how to describe the tone of this. I didn't want it to be like dark and depressing, but I thought this was the kind of thing where he would get nominated for it.
Got it. And so you
could give a nuanced, layered.
What I'm hearing you say is a tremendous amount of confidence. You're like, this is going to be great for Macaulay Culkin. This is going to be great for the fans. This is going to be great for the studio.
Yeah,
so
I'm going to win an Oscar. He's going to win an Oscar. It's going to be fucking sick, dude.
And this is like, mid-20s confidence that
it was like 24.
I mean,
24, 23,
got
24.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have this idea. You start calling people up.
So I get a meeting with the rights holder at the time. It was a conglomerate that owned it. I believe it was called Liberty Media. And if my memory is serving me correctly, it was Liberty Media. I think John Malone owned Liberty Media. Also, at this point, CAA was representing me, so that's a whole different story. But there was this awesome agent then, and he still works in the business. And to date, he's like one of the smartest people I've met in Hollywood. His name's Micah Green. Right, he was outside the box thinker, innovator. So I called him and I told him this, and he's like, "Dude, this is fucking awesome. Okay, what do I need to do to fucking help this happen?" Right. And I tell him, okay, I've got this meeting, and he's like, okay, yeah, cool. We CAA does some business with them too. We'll support. This is great. This needs to happen. This is the kind of thing that the independent movie business needs. So I'm super pumped, right? So I meet this dude, and again, this was a long time ago. So if my memory serves me correctly, I believe it was John Malone's brother.
Okay.
If it was actually John Malone who owned the company. So it was this dude's brother. And you know the actor Jason Bateman?
Yeah.
you know when Jason Bateman would play supporting characters, and the supporting characters he would play would be like very difficult people who would just be like, yeah, yeah, we're not going to do that,
Yeah.
Like it literally felt like I was sitting in front of Jason Bateman, like a Jason Bateman character, and
So the guy's not feeling it. He's
not feeling it. Super dark. He's like, it's too dark.
Yeah.
What we want to do, and then he told me exactly what they wanted to do. I can't believe, I don't remember if he told me then or my agent told me, but basically they wanted it, Taylor Lautner was starting to blow up, and they wanted to do like an Agent Cody Banks type thing with Taylor Lautner.
Okay, but I don't know what that is, but it sounds kiddie, basically.
Kitty like spy.
Yeah.
Kitty spy, So, look, this is one example, and we've spent so much time talking about this one fucking example, but I had 10 of these every month.
Got it. So, and I think I'm trying to distill the pieces. One is just a crazy level of confidence, but it sounds necessary for this. Two is a high level of persistence. Like you're going in and getting just told, no. And you're like, that does not deter me from the belief that this is legit.
Or even if you get like a high level meeting, I think the move is to kind of tell the people in the room what they want to hear.
Yeah.
Right? So what you're supposed to do. So if people ask me advice on how to break in, what I say is I did not do this. And I don't know how to do this, but I've seen other people do it and it's very successful. So I know this works. You go in, you ask them what they're looking for. What are you looking for exactly? They tell you, and then you pitch it to them. Mm-hmm. You pitch back to them the thing that they told you they want.
Got it. Yeah. Right? So a couple of years ago, it's like, we're looking for, female-led action flicks that whatever.
That smash the patriarchy.
Boom,
go.
Yes.
Okay. Check this out. So imagine.
Well, and the problem there is, as we said earlier, now you're making a movie that maybe you don't want to make, and like the prize is, because I didn't say that, I don't think you have the best job because you get to make movies and TV shows and that sort of thing. I think you have the best job because you get to make your stuff. That is what you want to make.
Yes. Yeah. And I have a vision and they let me execute it.
Yeah.
Versus like,
you're a director and that's fun. And like you do what Marvel Studio tells you and like you succeed or don't, but if it's not even yours at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So I wouldn't do that because I would go into the room and I didn't know how to, and I would honestly, this is where I didn't have a lot of confidence because I would leave and be like, am I like fucking up? Like, should I just ask them what they want and then pitch them? And I'm like, okay, next meeting, I'm going to go in, I'm going to ask them what they want and pitch it to them. And then I would like forget to do
Constitutionally,
it. I would just forget to do it. I'd go in and then they'd be like, I'd go in and I'd be like, all right, so you have the white rights to Waldo, right? They're like, yeah. And then I'm like, okay, so imagine it's like super dark. And they're like, you can feel the room just fucking deflating. And you're like, fuck.
Okay, so you get rejected a lot of times.
100% of the time.
100%.
100% of the time.
And then, so how do you then find your way in?
YouTube.
Now then you go permissionless, which is I think the third piece.
Yes. So I was like, okay, and a rapper who I named earlier explained this to me after the fact. I didn't know what I was doing because I was doing this intuitively, right? It was just, it was more like, what the hell's wrong with these people? Like, why do they want to make things that are lame? Mm-hmm. Huh. And then I was like, I don't know, let me just start making stuff and putting it on YouTube. Mm-hmm. I'm simplifying the process. It wasn't that simple because I didn't know what YouTube was.
Yeah. But you knew that you didn't need permission in the same way in order to do it.
When I first started, no, I had no idea. I thought you had to be like, I didn't know that anyone could start a YouTube channel.
Got it.
So the first short film that we made, like, so for people who are like watching this, I guess, and don't know me and don't know what I'm talking about, I have a series of fan fiction short films. Mm-hmm. That are reimaginings, reinterpretations of popular IP.
Yeah, and the ones that, I saw years ago, there was a Punisher one that was like, oh, this is super cool. There's a Power Rangers one that I saw as well. You've got several other different
Pokemon, there's a Hard R Mr. Rogers.
So you make these things. you've gotten like, you had James Vanderbeek in these. Did you know him at the time? How did you get
James? No, he's my best friend.
So you had already known him prior to this?
Oh yeah, he's my best friend. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay, so that I imagine helped. And you also got the guy who played the Punisher, right?
Tom, yeah. Tom Janney, yeah, he played the Punisher.
So James, you know. How do you get Tom to do this? Because you're able to get, I think, big people to sign on. At the time, now YouTube has Mr. Beast. He does incredible high production, multi-million-dollar things. You made these 10 years ago. Everything on YouTube was shot off of a potato, standing on top of your computer with you in, your closet. And then there were these short films that were made with the actor who played the Punisher. How did you do that? Because that, I think, was what, in addition to just being well written and well produced, it was like, oh, this does not belong on YouTube.
Right. So every single one of those short films came about differently. Mm-hmm. So you asked kind of a broad question. I'm going to try to answer it. Yeah. And if I'm not answering the question you want, just feel free to jump in.
I guess I'm trying to get like the pieces.
Yeah, I get it. So every short film came together differently. Mm-hmm. The idea for me was I didn't want to keep repeating the same thing over and over again, right? So after we did the Punisher short film, which was, at the end of the day, the Punisher short film was like a down the middle HBO, like old school HBO, feeling gritty and dark action thriller, right? It's effectively the structure of a Western, but then you take the Western elements out and you put it in an urban setting. That's the short. After that, people kept being like, dude, do Daredevil next, man. Or and it was always like dark and gritty character goes into a bar, starts a fight, like the same kind of thing. And I'm like, no, that's like not cool. So for the next one, I was like, I want to do it in black and white. Do it. And there's this Belgian movie from the 90s called Man Bites Dog. Very, very dark, very fucked up. And I wanted to take that movie, Man Bites Dog, and cross-pollinate it with Venom. Yeah. So then I'm like, okay, so the next one's going to be a complete contrast from the one that came before it. And then the third one was like, okay, now it's going to be animated. Because I want to do like the Ren and Stimpy thing.
How are you funding these and getting people to participate? Because these are wildly, like, if you pitch these to a lot of people without conviction, it's like, why am I going to sign up for a black and white based on a Belgian? How are you funding and getting people to buy into this vision?
So they cost like, first of all, they each one of these costs like, the Punisher one, the Venom one, they cost under $10K each.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
And that's like I have to acknowledge that how do I say this? So music video and commercial directors just have access to equipment and stuff, right? Stuff that becomes like cost prohibitive. And so they were able to bring this in at a significantly low cost.
Yeah. I mean, when I think of what our videos cost, it's like it's less than $10K, but it's not much less. And we don't have actors and like the degree of editing.
But the actors are doing it for free, right? Like Tom Jane literally wanted to do this.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, he wanted to do this. Like I knew Tom. He's like, hey, pal. I don't want to interpret. I don't want to imitate Tom Jane, but I can do a good Tom Jane impression.
So, but how did you like? There's elements here that I think that seem extraordinary for some people that I'm trying to boil down to like the creative process that many people can tap into. Was it from networking in Hollywood?
I don't think that, because I hear you. The problem is when I get down to the when you boil this down to it's almost like the world I made these in doesn't fucking exist anymore.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Everything's changed so much, right? So there was no business model around the internet back then.
Okay.
Right? So the internet was this Wild West unknown thing. And by the way, when we made Dirty Laundry, right?
Which is the Punisher one.
Punisher one. Which, by the way, this was as much Tom Jane's thing as it was mine.
Okay.
Right? It wasn't like, oh, I went, so it was as much Tom. Phil Joannou directed it. Phil was like one of my first men. He ended up being one of my close friends for years. I love Phil Joannou. Fuck, I lost my train of thought because I thought about Phil and then I got.
Well, what I'll say that I'm hearing, and you don't necessarily need to pick this up, is that I was asking you how you met these people. Like, it doesn't exist anymore. The internet was a brand new thing. Anymore
because there's a business around the internet. Now you're saying, oh, Mr. Beast, right?
Yeah.
So now there's like agents who represent influencers. Like the word influencer did not exist.
Gatekeepers, and people have been asked 40 times to do something like this, and it sounds like at the time
word collab, like none of this existed.
So you innovated a way of producing. Like, you innovated a model for producing content that just didn't exist. Like, if Tom Jane were asked today by a new up-and-comer to do something like this, he might have already been asked 100 times today versus back then. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. Also, back then, what we were effectively doing was Rage Against the Machine. Right? It was like movie studios and like this small group of movie studios and this small group of TV networks, they dictate what everyone watches. And they're fucking in charge. And it's like, fuck you, dude. Why do you get to program things for the world? Right?
So this is a vision that it sounds like people can buy into, and there's a collective feeling, which when you describe this, people are like, oh yeah, I want to be part of that.
It's a rebellion. It was a rebellion against the machine. Now that machine doesn't really exist, and the machine is like effectively crumbled, right? The machine's crumbled, it's gone on strike. There's a whole other thing. But
the part of it that is still real is like you were tapping into a feeling that you had that was broadly held. And when you talked about it, people are like, yeah, I want to do that, and I'll do it at a discount, and I'm going to give it my heart, and I'm going to tell my friend about it as well.
Yeah, people thought it was cool. Like, Diamond Dallas Page, for instance. You know who that is?
No.
He's a pro wrestler. Again, very, very close friend of mine.
Got it.
I love DDP. If you're a wrestling guy, you know who he is. So in the Punisher short, Ron Perlman is in it, right? He plays a role. I originally wanted DDP to be in it, but Tom Jane just called Ron Perlman because they're like this, and Ron just showed up on set.
So I think this is the thing there's like a rebellion is one archetype of how to get people to buy into a vision. But when Elon Musk is like, I want to put a rocket into the sky and a man on Mars, he's able to get people to work longer, harder, in shittier circumstances on a random archipelago in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And it sounds like that is an element that is important.
It felt like punk rock. It felt cool. Like we were doing this cool thing. And again, YouTube wasn't cheesy.
Yeah. Got it.
There's like a cheese factor now to YouTube. You're like, there's a like, and again, not everyone. I think you're dope, right? But there is a kind of a corniness to like, hey guys, smash that subscribe button and click like. It's like, shut the fuck up, dude.
Got it. So
like, you know what I mean?
No, the adults wanted to be part of this, is what I'm hearing.
Yes. It was. I'm struggling to talk about it because I also feel a little sad. I'm like, fuck, that was so cool back then. It was just like this cool thing that felt like we were all doing. And it wasn't just me, right? It was all the filmmakers I collaborated with, all the actors. So I called James up, Vanderbeek, and I asked him. I was like, hey, dude, do you want to be in the Venom one? Because there's a scene in the end credits with me, and I play a rival documentary filmmaker who's making a Bullseye movie. Bullseye is the Daredevil villain. And Derek Mears ended up playing, Derek Mears plays Swamp Thing, plays Jason. He ends up playing Bullseye. But I originally called James Vanderbeek to play Bullseye, and he's like, I can't remember what show he was shooting. I think it was Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23. So he wasn't available that day, but he's like, dude, I would love to do another one. The next one you do.
And then Power Rangers.
Yeah. And then we were just like randomly out to dinner one night, and he's like, hey, I want to, let's do one. Let's do a Mortal Kombat one. I was like, nah, dude, I'm doing a Power Rangers one. You should definitely do the Power Rangers one. He's like, really? Power Rangers? I'm like, bro, I know everything there is to know about Power Rangers. It's going to be sick. And he's like, okay.
I mean, I hear again, the conviction that you are carrying through all of this is, it's kind of like the way that a party gets started. It's like, no, it's going to be sick. Everyone's going to be there. It's going to be fucking rad.
Yeah. But I think also the other piece of this is, if I don't believe it's going to be dope,
it can't
other people then know
that you don't believe, and
that
so
I don't believe it's going to be
authentic
dope. So it just
belief.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because I start, I'll be like, hey man, do you want to do it? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh.
Got it.
Right.
And so to correct me if I'm wrong, if there are other elements of this that I'm not understanding, but then you have this, people start to see this. Are you then still going outbound to the Netflixes and everything, or does inbound start to come and be like,
inbound? Got
it. So now that you've gone permissionless, created this thing that people didn't think that would work, that did work, that they feel, now people are like, can you do that with our IP? Can you do that with this thing?
Yeah.
Got it. And then you're off to the races.
Yes. But there was, but it wasn't as fluid as that. Because it then became, yeah, come in for a meeting. Can you do that with our IP? I'm like, okay, cool. So this is how I see it. And then they're like, okay, but why don't you do this? And then I'm like, look, this shit again? No.
There's a steadfastness that I think is important, because it's very, when you talk about businesses and startups, it's like, if it doesn't work with the customer, you have to pivot. And what I'm hearing is that you didn't do that. There was a conviction to a particular aesthetic that you were like, no, that's not cool. I don't want to do something that isn't cool. And if I'm not going to, even if you give me an opportunity that ostensibly looks really nice.
I mean, you're saying it in a way that implies a lot more confidence that I actually had at the time, because I just walk away and be like, oh my God, I fucked up so bad.
Well, something in you, I think, it's funny, I'm reading this book on, you heard of the daemon and the idea of the daemon or the genius. In Rome, the genius, they believed, unlike today where genius is like a capacity of the intellect, it was sort of like a guardian that came with you and it expressed itself through you. And the Greeks called it the daemon.
Sure.
And it was like this thing that takes over. And sometimes you're like, what the fuck did I just do?
Oh, yeah.
Why did I do that?
Bro, all the time. I'm like, what the fuck is happening?
And the idea that they had is like, this is some creatively connected part of you that doesn't suffer bullshit. And it can feel...
Even LaserHawk, even Captain LaserHawk, now we're jumping in the timeline here, right? So after CastleVania dropped, and it was like this hit that no one fucking saw coming. I mean, I saw it coming. Because, I mean, at this point, I'm like in this world, right? Like, I know. The move would have been to then go to every game company and be like, be like Kevin. Again, this isn't a diss against Kevin Feige, but like do the thing where you're like, this is the blueprint that I've developed. I will do the exact same thing for you. And then go back to Netflix and be like, all right, so I have this portfolio of intellectual property. And we're going to execute it all exactly like this. And it becomes like a factory. And honestly, I wanted to do that for a second, but the filmmaker that directed the Power Rangers short film, this guy Joseph Kahn, right? Like right after CastleVania blew up, we were out to dinner. Actually, with my parents were in town, so the four of us were out to dinner. And I was like telling him this whole thing, and he looks at me and he's like, so you want to be Haim Saban?
I don't even know what that means.
I took that as like, that to me was like the deepest insult. So Haim Saban's the guy who created Power Rangers.
Okay.
Created it,
Got
right?
it.
But really what he did was he bought footage from a Japanese TV show called Super Sentai. And then he filmed American actors in the high school, and then he crossed it together. And he's milked this formula. He just keeps pumping these things out, right? He's lording over the Power Rangers IP. Then he sold
Yeah.
it to Disney.
Yeah.
Then it tanked. He bought it back, and then and now he sold it to Hasbro. Right.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't happy with the Power Rangers short, but until he was, and then it was weird. And I'd actually been to his house before in a different context. This dude is like extremely wealthy, right? But there was something within me, like deep within me on a fucking soul level, to have another artist look me in the eye and say, "You're going to be Haim Saban," that I went, fuck no. And I immediately torched all of those plans to have this portfolio of like game IP and be like, whoa, and then I was like, okay, I'm doing the same thing that we fucking did before, where, you do the Punisher one, which is down the middle, and then you pivot and you do other extreme, black and white, mock documentary with Venom.
Meaning you give them what they want down the middle, and then you go left field.
No, so then the next one was Captain LaserHawk. So then Captain LaserHawk, it's not that. It's not, because, it could have just been like, now we're doing a Splinter Cell espionage show.
Got it.
Right? Just down the middle, what people expect.
It feels like you have a problem with meeting expectation or doing the obvious.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
It's like there's a part of me that wants to, and then I start,
because there could be a great Splinter Cell espionage like that. Somebody should do that.
Someone should fucking do that.
Yeah.
I see the pot at the gold I see the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow where I fucking do that. Mm-hmm. But there's something that just starts fucking freaking out, and then something wild comes out that is in a different direction. And I'm saying this with a lot more conviction and confidence in this setting.
Yeah.
It's not always like that, right? Because I'm like walking around, I'm like, dude, I totally fucked up. I should have just fucking done the normal thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why didn't I do the fucking normal thing?
Yeah. Well, because again, if you have access to Ubisoft, and I'm not saying that you should have, and you make Splinter Cell, and you get a person to do it, and it's an espionage, people are going to click because they've played Splinter Cell and want Splinter Cell again. That's what they want. They want more and deeper of what they already enjoyed.
Do the obvious thing.
Yeah.
Do 7 of the obvious thing.
I feel the same way, by the way, when it comes to our videos.
Of people doing the obvious thing ad nauseum.
Yeah.
Right? Like, to the point where I could even distill it down into like a plot structure. Mm-hmm. Like, so in the first episode, we establish the villain. We give him a strong motivation. And at the end of the first episode, I could literally create a fucking Bible, dude, that I could hand to people and say, this is how you replicate this. Because I can, one of the things that I'm really good at is deconstructing something down to its core elements. Mm-hmm. And explaining why it's connecting and why it's working. Mm-hmm. And so, like, maybe I should have done that. Just been like, and here's a document on what it has to look like. And this is what art style they will all have. And this is, but then there's like this creative part of me that is like, you are being a bitch.
I feel the same, by the way, the same thing. So like it's at a different level because they're 1 week long projects, but they liked that actor that I did on Game of Thrones. I know that if I do the other game, and I only have a tolerance for so many sequels before I'm like, I hate this now, and I have to go do something increasingly different. And for me, it got to be like, I am not doing enough different. Yeah. And the sequels work. And by the way, some of the sequels have earned a lot of money, done really well. But I do think that if you do too many sequels, you debase the bedrock of the creative juice that keeps the thing going.
1,000%.
Yeah.
The thing that I find it's to me, it's more funny. I find it amusing. I actually find it amusing. Because I was on social media like super early, right? This is as you pointed out, all of this was 2012 when no one was doing this kind of stuff. And I would talk about, hey, the internet, the social media, this is a thing that's gonna blow up. And everyone's like, no, this is bullshit. This is bullshit. It's all about the theatrical experience. I'm like, okay. Now, it's kind of swung so hard the other direction where people are like coming up to me, like just random people, I'm at the coffee shop. Someone's like, "Hey, you need to really work on your social media presence."
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, no, I don't. Social media does not matter.
Now you're like, I want to do cinema now.
I know I do. Yeah. I'm like, social media is like so uncool. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter because of what you're saying, right? It values pumping out the same, it values endless sequels.
But
rewards.
In the short term, I think this is the thing that probably movie executives, I felt this particularly where I first saw it in my life was with X-Men First Class.
Yeah.
That didn't perform well.
Yes.
But I felt that it didn't perform well because the whatever X-Men came before, which was the Wolverine, repetitive.
Audience had been burnt out.
Exactly.
And they were like, this is bullshit. No one cares.
But First Class was excellent. And that paid back later when they did Days of Future Past.
Absolutely.
And they look at these movies and they go, well, First Class was a dud and Days of Future Past was good and Wolverine was pretty good. It's like, no, you've got it totally wrong.
Yeah.
You're not viewing the causality correctly.
Yes.
And Days of Future Past and this is the same thing that you're describing, which is when you're just churning out sequels and you go, what was the last video that did well? How do I do the same thing but slightly different? Right. You will do well tomorrow. But in a week or a year or whatever the next iteration of time is, you'll go, why isn't it working? And you'll be chasing your own tail, unable to figure it out. And I think this is something that I feel deeply, and I don't think that a lot of people connect with.
No, because it's almost like hamsters on a wheel.
Mm-hmm. And it's this over connection to the audience. We want more of that. We want more of that until they're like, we hate you for giving us.
No, totally. I mean, like, dude, it's kind of like if you're in an ecosystem that values views, because that's really what you're saying. That's what I'm hearing you say, right? Like, Days of Future Past was the payoff for a risk that First Class took.
Yes.
Right? So if you're in a culture that really values views, like this whole YouTube thing, the game that you're in, you are able to divorce yourself from that and go, look, dude, I want to be fucking creatively fulfilled. So I'm going to take some, not even risks. I'm just going to express myself. And I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me, right? It feels to me, and again, I'm not really in this world. So just kind of I'm almost like an outside observer. It feels to me that a lot of internet content creators are not really entrepreneurs. They're slaves to
the algorithm. Yeah.
They're slaves to an algorithm that's fickle, and they're slaves to an audience that almost looks at them as like a piece of cattle who's gonna hit the same thing over and over again, right?
And I think important to say, there is a way to make money. This is the analogous to the director that comes in and says, what do you want? I'll give it to you. What do you want?
Right.
I'll give it to you. And you can make money, and you can spend your whole career trying to guess what some audience or studio executive or algorithm wants. It's a very stressful existence to do it that way. And you can make a lot of money. You can do it.
Right. But I think the other trade-off for me that's very confusing is the amount of eyeballs you would get on YouTube versus the amount of money you're getting back for those eyeballs. It doesn't seem fair.
To who?
To the creators.
Yeah,
because you're being paid pennies on the dollar for your reach.
I think the thing that I realize that creators don't is that eyeballs, there's only a metric for eyeballs and then AdSense. But what is not there that you need to feel is there's a balance sheet of like audience goodwill and love and trust.
Right.
And that is not all created the same. And I feel like First Class changed the balance sheet for the X-Men. It's like you have
100%.
Love and trust, and it didn't pay you back today, but it's there. And the same thing on YouTube, which is like, yeah, this only got 10,000 or 100,000 or whatever amount of views isn't significant to you, but it's like it had so much heart that the people that loved it, and I've experienced this. I did a video on a breakup that I had. It got fewer views than others, but every time that someone approaches me in the street, they go, "You're the guy that did that. Dude, that video impacted me so hard."
I said the same thing to you.
Yeah, it was a breakup video.
Yeah,
every time. Every time.
Yeah.
And it's when people then buy my course for $600, it's easy to think that it's because of my 10 million view video, which is the one that converted the final piece of the sale. That's my days of future past, though. The one that like built it, and I think this is tough for people to recognize. It's the other stuff. It's the first classes. It's the breakup video.
Totally.
It's the stuff that comes from honest, creative bedrock, I think.
So I agree with everything you said. The way I see you as an artist, and the way I see your YouTube channel, I don't look at your YouTube channel as like a business, even though it makes you money and even though you have a course and yada yada, right? I look at you as a guy who's soul searching and trying to find himself and get to know himself deeper. And your YouTube channel is an expression of that.
I think when I lose, the best and healthiest way for me to love the YouTube channel, which I haven't been very involved in, is when I go, this is a diary. And like, and I can write my diary in a way that is more understandable to other people and not just use my own shorthand. But that's when it's best, is when it is me sharing what I am learning about myself and the world, and I'm honest about what works. And I put some thought into what's the way to present this that an audience can access to a degree.
Yes.
So it's not super obtuse to people and totally, impossible to get. But yeah, I think that's the other analogy. I have 100 of these that I've been thinking about, is like, I think business people, it's kind of like a rocket ship, and they measure altitude, and they're only familiar, like, it's going well when the altitude is getting higher and higher and higher. Yeah. The thing that makes it go high is the fuel. And at the bottom, there's a ton of fuel burning. Good shit is happening, but it is not getting off. It's not getting off the ground. Yeah. And at the top, the fuel cuts out and it still goes. Right. And that's where like the MCU is right now for me. It's like, there's no fuel in that thing anymore. It's going to continue to go for a while, and it's going to go up and up and up, and then it'll go down. It'll go, what's happening? It's like, you stopped burning the creative juices years ago. And that was where you were doomed. And I think that business people don't get that.
Yes, absolutely. Because it's a short-term view on business. I feel like, if you go back decades ago, business people had a very like long-term, they felt like they were custodians of something. Versus now it's like, it's the tech mentality. Right, we're gonna make something out of nothing. It's not gonna fully work, and we're gonna drop it, and we're gonna say it's gonna change the world, and it will, but it'll create just as many problems, and then we'll cash out. I feel like I'm going on this like negative rant against YouTube and like the thing. No, the reason I was being super like kind of aggro about the whole like creator economy is, I feel for the younger people. It's just about the young. It's about the kids that are being sold this dream that I don't think will exist when they get there.
What is not going to exist? And what is the dream?
The creator economy.
That you can make content and make a living. You think that there will be fewer people?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Why? I think the economics of it are dicey. I think this is sold as a thing, or it's presented as a thing that's like an entrepreneurial endeavor, right? But I think if you're a content creator today breaking in, I would not try to be an entrepreneur. I would try to be an intrapreneur.
And define the difference for me?
So instead of going and starting your own YouTube channel and trying to build a business around that, I would go, no, I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm an intrapreneur. What I'll do is I'm going to go find Charlie and help him grow his business.
And because you think there will be a consolidation there will be fewer total people that are able to make livings off of their following?
I think there's like an economies of scale thing that needs to happen in order for the machine to work, right? You have to have you need to have a certain like volume of output. Because I mean, dude, you're the expert here. I'm literally just making shit up. So I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Like, Netflix shows, I know what I'm talking about.
Got it.
I'm talking to the expert. I'm like being a douchebag. I'm like telling you how it goes. But from my understanding, from my POV.
Yeah.
You need consistency.
Definitely.
Right? You need a format.
Yes. And I think innovating in format it's almost necessary.
Right. So you need consistency. You need a format. And consistency doesn't mean like one video every 6 months.
No, it means like one a week at least.
Right.
Yeah.
So you need scale. And in order to achieve the scale, you need a team. You need like people, and you need a dedicated team.
I don't think you need a team. That's where I would disagree. No, I think that there's a number of ways to break in. You need some X factor, and it can be a team. It's like you can have incredible post-production stuff, and that can be your thing. You can also be incredibly engaging, and like Andrew Tate didn't need a team. He could have sat there on camera, just been like, here's what it's going to be. You know, like he could have done that, and he would have drawn people to him. I'm not casting any moral value on that, but
are you a fan of Andrew Tate?
No, not
Charlie?
particularly.
Do you want to be the next top G, Charlie?
I am the top G. I've been working on my Andrew Tate impression over here for a long time.
But I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, like he would have essentially gone viral
with a potato camera on top of his thing because of his charisma and the topic. And so I do think you don't need a team. That is one way to do it, though, in my opinion.
Okay.
You need excellence in some area.
Sure. But counterpoint to that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Andrew Tate was a world champion kickboxer.
Yeah.
That's a real thing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Even he was rich.
Yeah.
He had millions of dollars.
Right. Okay. So he didn't break out on YouTube.
You need to live. That's
right.
Yeah. Like, so if you're like a 19-year-old has done nothing.
Right.
Yeah, you need to go live.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm concerned about those kids because they literally, like, if you're a 19-year-old and you're like, dude, I'm gonna become a YouTuber, and then I'm gonna become an influencer, and then I'm gonna get brand deals. No one is sitting them down and going, dude, like, this is how many millions of followers you need to have, and this is the level of engagement you need to have in order to get a brand deal. And by the way, this is how much the brand deal will fucking get you, right? By the way, if you're a plumber, this is how much being a plumber pays.
Yeah.
And this is how many hours you have to work to get paid this much as a plumber. And then, you know what I mean? Like,
I hear you.
That's what I'm saying.
Totally. I agree with that. That the number of kids that have very little to say and are like, I'll play video games or talk about my day.
Right.
That think they're going to hit it is just, no, you need to.
It's staggering.
Yes.
It's staggering. And the social media companies, I think, are doing them a fucking disservice, right? Because they're getting free content. They're getting
because one in every 100,000 is going to succeed,
right.
And so it's like, what do we care? We'll take 100,000 applicants for this job that we don't pay you for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is just another like dark dystopian thing that they're doing, and I'm yo, like, and this is why I'm like adamantly saying like, okay, I can tell you my story of what I did X, Y, Z, and then it blew up in the thing, but it's like, don't emulate it because it's not going to work.
Got it.
It worked for me. That doesn't mean that this is like some sort of blueprint for success.
The things that I tried to distill, I would defend as a bit more timeless, though, which is deep creative conviction.
100%.
You know, like the things, and I highlighted them, I won't repeat them all here, but it's not the answer for you today, kid, is not do a YouTube bootleg like Adi did. Yeah. But there are principles that you follow that I think.
There are principles, yes. Yeah. It's almost like the preface in the book needs to be, look, it's very fucking hard. It's very competitive. And yada yada yada, and all the fucking warnings and the warning label and this and that. You know, it's like smoking will give you cancer. But if you're still fucking invested, then listen to everything Charlie just said about finding your voice.
So let's pause. Well, can we even talk meaningfully about how to find one's voice?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Can we?
Yes.
Okay, help me there, because I'm actually working on this still, and I feel like it is a continual process of removing layers.
Yes. But for you, it started with emulation, right? Because you're like, oh man, I don't feel cool. I don't know how to talk to people. I feel awkward in social situations, right? But you have this like pattern recognition thing going on.
Yeah.
So then you're like, okay, so who's cool? Tom Cruise is cool.
he goes like this,
It goes like this. And then he like touches you. He like touches you. All right, cool. And you're breaking it down, right? Yeah. Which is emulation.
Mm-hmm.
That's no different than a writer being like, okay, I want to write a gangster movie or a space movie or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Care Bears movie with guns. But yeah, I really like the dialogue in Pulp Fiction. Who wrote that? Quentin Tarantino. Oh, okay. What else did he write? Oh, Django Unchained. Okay, cool. And then, and then you emulate Tarantino
and
dialogue.
You're picking up things similar to you, like you did with movies and I did with social interactions. Or, there's these repetitive things that I can find analytically and I can combine them together.
And if you look at like any great artist, not any, I mean, there are, some people that are like at the age of 3 picked up a violin and went, and everyone was like, whoa. And then the king sent a fucking carriage for them and they were abducted and then thrown in a cell and never heard from again. Because, the king's nephew was actually the best violinist. But where was I going with that before I...
No, so that there are people that just have their voice and a prodigious talent at a young age. But for a lot of people, it starts with emulation.
Yeah. I believe that for pretty much everyone, it starts with emulation. Because the prodigious voice thing, because you look at like M. Night Shyamalan, for instance. Do you know who M. Night Shyamalan is? So he did, his first movie kind of went nowhere. Then his second movie, which really people look at as his first movie, was The Sixth Sense.
I didn't know he had one before that.
Yeah. Didn't work. And he also wrote Stuart Little, I think Stuart Little 1 or 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he had odd jobs. He was floating around. But Sixth Sense really blows up as a writer director, right? I don't think he knew what he was doing when he did Sixth Sense.
In what regard?
Well, he talks about it. It was more intuitive than it was based on craft.
Mm-hmm.
He was emulating Hitchcock.
Okay.
He was emulating the masters of old.
Mm-hmm.
Part Hitchcock, part this, part that, and kind of mixing it, and then it connects, right? And then he spent the next like decade of his life trying to recapture the magic.
Yeah.
But it's like, and then he got better and better at the craft of it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's the journey of most artists.
How do you view Shyamalan? Because as a film buff, he's like iconic film to start it off. I thought that was his first. Unbreakable, solid, good. And then it's almost like a steady downhill, at least in
but also the weight of expectations, right? At that time, he was getting bigger and bigger budgets. So it's like, how do you, how society measured success of a movie was like deeply interconnected with box office, which is fucking weird, right? I think what kind of maybe paralyzed him, I don't know the guy, but was the fact that The Sixth Sense was one of the best movies of the year in 1999. It was financially successful. It was critically acclaimed. It hit every benchmark. I feel like everything he did after that was successful had they come first.
Got it.
Right? If Lady in the Water was his first movie, you'd be like, oh, this is a great film from this up-and-coming director, right?
Got it.
Had Sixth Sense been his fifth movie or his sixth movie, not his first movie,
it works way better as his magnum opus.
Right. The story works better.
Yeah.
Right? But, I feel like part of, all great artists in my experience, because I haven't really met a prodigy other than myself.
I got you.
All great storytellers that I've met, you start with some form of emulation. There's something you're emulating somewhere, right? Whether it's your voice, whether it's your tone, because how could you not? It's not like you just kind of appeared on this planet. Like you came in like...
Yeah, you're speaking English.
You're speaking English.
Yeah, you copied the language.
Right. You like certain films over other films, right?
And so what is the stage after emulation? And how is it literally just emulation and then the stripping away of the pieces that don't feel?
Then it becomes deconstruction. And then I think eventually you reach a like a nexus point, which is like the, what's that Albert Einstein quote where he's like, true genius is knowing how to hide your sources.
Yeah.
Right? True genius is knowing how to hide your sources.
Got it.
Eventually you get to the point where you have such a deep reservoir of knowledge of all the things you're emulating that you can remix them, reinterpret them, paint them in a way that like it now looks nothing like the original.
I've also found that, and I've heard people say this, and I'm starting to feel it. Breath work actually helps, just even like for writing ideas. But there's the old cliche of you learn all the rules, and then you get the confidence to drop them.
Okay. So creatively, here's what I think. Here's what I've experienced. The confidence to drop them looks like. Eventually, you develop a point of view, and this is why the young prodigy thing I think is bullshit. Because eventually, you develop a point of view, and that point of view comes from failure, heartbreak, success,
life. Yeah.
Like clinching failure and the jaws of victory, right? Like all like just fucking up.
Yeah.
Growing, evolving, all the things you're doing. You find you develop a point of view. And then when you go back and you start telling the story, then you're like, okay, well, I can't just tell the story now. I have to infuse it with my point of view, with this wisdom that I've developed. But here's the catch.
Okay.
Here's the fucking catch. Here's where a lot of people fuck up. They're being psyoped. So what they think is their voice is not.
Yeah.
They've been sold a propaganda narrative. And then they're running around writing.
And their voice is down with the patriarchy, or their voice is
Yeah. Or, hey, I check all the boxes of this one movement, so I'm gonna make a thing, about that, or whatever it is. On every permutation of this.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like the social thing du jour is now. I was listening to The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling. Did you hear that podcast? It talked about her creative process, and I believe it was she, was being abused by her husband, and I think her mom died, and like after the first or second Harry Potter, and then it informed the dark turn that Harry Potter took, and it's like there was no way for me to write this as this, fanciful, fun wizard world. There had to be pain and loss in it, and I think that is different than. There was something on the news that I saw that,
100%,
which is like, no, like I know grief now. I know like that it's coming through me in a way that it would be dishonest 100%, to resist.
1000%.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Right? Great art peers into someone's soul. Not interested in in like a lecture from the news.
And it's
We're
almost
interested in a human being leaving an imprint.
And I do think it's an avoidance. It can I remember some of the stuff that I wrote younger because I just hadn't lived very much. And I so deeply, I was desperate. I remember Kurt Cobain, he was in such pain. And I was so jealous of him.
Yeah.
That guy killed
Pain's
himself.
Fucking cool, dude.
He was, oh my God. And I just so deeply wanted.
You're like, dude, you're such a big rock star. Yeah, but it's all pain, bro.
I wanted that level of angst. And that's why we look at some teenage stuff and it's it's angsty and it's this, but it's almost grabbing onto the depth of feeling that they see in adults that have lost stuff and infusing it into their girlfriend that doesn't want to talk to them that day. And that's why we look back at it, it's fun.
That's why the CW works, right? You take really complex adult emotions and then you strip it down into one note and you're like, I want to love you.
Yeah.
But I can't.
Yes.
They're all like...
And it's sincere at that age. That's probably one of the only ways you can create art at that age is maudlin and all that kind of one note stuff because you haven't lived.
Well, no, but that stuff's made by adults. So I'm judging the adults who are making it.
Got it.
I'm not judging the consumer.
And the consumer it's resonating with the consumer because it's like, this is so true to my experience.
Right.
Yeah. But the adults who are making it perhaps are not being true to their experience. It's
maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little douchey too. Because I mean, look, there's a version where you're like also knowing. There's a balance between understanding the audience you're writing it for versus being a slave to them.
Got it.
Right. Like knowing your audience is, at the end of the day, I think it's really important. Right. Like I know that. Like in LaserHawk, for instance, I know that. Fuck, I don't want to go into spoiler. Well, fuck it, I'll go into spoiler territory. Like I know some of the emotional reactions the audience is going to have because I know the audience because I am the audience. So you can play with that. You can play with expectations and whatnot. So it's knowing the audience versus being like a slave to them.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like people in your ecosystem, the content, the internet content creator ecosystem, get kind of a harsh dose of this because there's like comments.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the comments can be traumatizing.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Oh, I think for a lot of people, they dictate their emotional state over the course of the day or the week or the whatever. And the way that I've been thinking about it lately, and it's evolving, is it's not my vision or the audience, but it is a question of which is at the center. And if you lose track of your vision in order to please the comments or in order to please the audience, it's why are you doing this in the first place? Like, this can be a business, but this isn't. You're losing contact with art, I think, at that point, because it needs to come from you. Versus if you're like, let me figure out what the audience most deeply wants, and I'll add a thin veneer of me on top.
Yeah,
you can do that, and you can make money doing that, but you just be honest with yourself, and it's probably not going to be very creatively fulfilling to do it that way.
It's almost like there's an alchemy process between all of this. And if you lean too heavily into one aspect over the other, right? Because on the other extreme of everything that I'm saying, because on some level I'm thinking back to everything I said, and it almost sounds like make it for you, man. Fuck the audience. But there are so many filmmakers that I know that are massively talented. I'm talking like cinema guys.
Yeah,
massively talented that don't have thriving careers because of this exact thing that you intuitively understand as a YouTube creator, which is I also have to please an audience. I have to make it for an audience. If I'm just making it for me and I'm not thinking about the audience, I will not have a job.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like I literally sat down with a filmmaker like 4 months ago who I was like, okay, so this movie, and I was explaining to him that this movie, you're effectively making it for the critics, right? Because it's a specific genre. It's like really highbrow. It's the kind of thing that you got to get the critics on board, and then
then maybe you get an Oscar and they
and then the audience shows up, right? This is he's trying to make the kind of movie. He's trying to make the kind of movie that no one will watch if it has bad reviews.
Got it.
Right? You know, there's certain movies that if it's like a period piece and it has bad reviews, like fucking no one's watching that shit. It's a period piece drama with Colin Firth.
I was going to say Banshees of Inisherin is what I was going to say.
Yeah. That movie without, Martin McDonagh, without reviews, you're fucked.
Yeah.
And I told him that. And he was like, no, man, I'm making it for myself. And I went, dude, you are so fucked and you don't even know it. You're making it for yourself. You are so fucked and you don't even know it.
And only if you want commercial success. If what you want is creative expression, great. And I think there's a way to get both. It's like,
I feel like the way to get both is through the balance of the two.
Of course.
And I'm almost contradicting everything I was saying earlier. And because it's kind of like being, imagine you're a playwright. Okay. You're not writing it for the audience, but you want the audience to feel something. Right? It's almost like I feel something. I understand this inner truth, and I want to share that inner truth with the audience, and I want them to feel something.
Yeah.
If they're not feeling it, but you're feeling it, what the fuck, dude? That's like the tree falling in the fucking thing and no one heard it, right?
It reminds me of a relationship,
Right.
which is like,
exactly.
look, if I'm going to feel good about
1000%.
this,
Right.
I'm really great with how things are going and you're miserable. It's like, I should just have stayed home alone and felt really good by myself.
You're not in a relationship
Yeah.
at that point, right? You're in something else.
Yeah, which is fine. Just go be by yourself.
It's got to like, at the end of the day, the way I look at art is it's got to vibrate and resonate. And if you fall into the trap of it, it's got to vibrate and resonate with everybody. That's a trap.
Yeah.
But also the other side of that, like the duality of that, is it only has to resonate and vibrate with me.
Yes, and it does have to vibrate with you. And there's a way to find things that vibrate with you that can connect with some portion of the market or the audience.
100%.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, it's all a balancing act, and I think how does someone get into this balancing act? Well, I think one way you could do it is exist in all the extremes, right?
Just make your own thing and feel how that feels,
Right.
and then go hardcore into like the most pandery.
Yeah,
like
smash that subscribe button. Like you go from like, fuck you, I'm an artiste, and then you go to like to the other side. You're like, hey guys.
yeah. I mean, that's what I did when I was in my corporate job. It was like, there's none of me in here. It's like I'm doing Excel spreadsheets. I'm familiar with.
It's like you become fucking Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. Yeah. Hey, it's so good to see you. I'm just so happy to be here.
Is that herringbone?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like some people exist in the extremes until you find the center, or some people just intuitively get to the center. But what I feel like your voice is, it's in the center of that.
Got it.
Right? Because when someone says to me, I am doing it for me and fuck everyone else, well, okay, dude, but we exist in a world and there's a social contract. And I actually think that this is some sort of illusion where we're all more interconnected, part of some sort of consciousness, collective consciousness than it may appear being in a physical body. I don't know if that made any fucking sense.
Well,
But by you saying I'm making it for me and no one else, you're almost you're denying your own humanity.
What I hear that, and what it reminds me of is an element of myself, which is like, I am afraid to be in, personally, and I feel afraid to be in relationship because I'm afraid I'll lose me. And therefore the safest thing to do is go, fuck it. I'm just going to make sure that I have me at the least, which is like what the artist is saying is like, this is my vision, because I don't know how to have my vision in a way that cooperates and is involved with someone else's vision without sacrificing one of us. And I'm tired of sacrificing myself.
Yes.
And there is a way to do both that is more mature.
Well, not only there's a way, your higher self
wants you to do it that way. Yes.
In that middle.
Because why make something, like, look, if you know the feeling and it's inside of you and you're familiar with it, you don't need to manifest that poem or anything in order to like create that feeling in someone else. It is, in some ways, it is both an expression of yourself and a gift to other people.
1000%.
Where should, what would you like people to check out? Is Captain LaserHawk? Is there something else that you have coming out? I know you've got games.
Yeah.
Point them wherever you want.
Captain LaserHawk. Captain LaserHawk Blood
on
Dragon
Netflix.
Remix. It's streaming right now, all 6 episodes on Netflix. And then there's a Devil May Cry series in the works, which has been announced. So it's not like a spoiler or anything.
Yeah.
And more stuff on the way.
Fuck yeah, dude. Well, thank you. Thank you for the chat. Jenny, who has been silently here. Thank you for your patience.
This was super dope.
It was a great time, man. We'll catch you guys later. Peace.